Yo and hello everybody. Mike here. Welcome to Hobby Think Tank, where we, take various topics every week and try to make you guys think differently about it. I'm Mike Moynihan. That's Danny Black. Danny, good to see you.
Good to see you, buddy. What's going on?
Man, I am running around like a chicken with my head cut off with life, but that is okay. We've talked about this topic we're going to discuss today. I know we want to keep it to our half hour, but I think it's something worth discussing, and that is the hobby relevance slash good of a player versus how good are they on the field. And this applies to all four major sports, including hockey, right? Like, is there a big difference in being good at the sport and having your cards matter to people? What do you think?
Well, I think, one of the conversations is what do we mean by good and relevant? And in the card world, good, relevant tends to mean value. So are we talking about if somebody's good on the field, do they have expensive cards? Or are we talking about, if they're bad on the field, could they still have expensive cards or vice versa? And I think all those situations can apply.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways and tangents you can go with this. I certainly think of when I think of this topic, it always boggles my mind that let's take Anthony Volpe for the Yankees, right? Top prospect in the major leagues now. The fact that any of his cards are worth more than any Carmen Killebrew card makes no sense to me whatsoever. The fact that these prospects, pick your prospect, pick your guy, Elliot De La Cruz, I don't know. I'm just thinking of guys off the top of my head, even Julio Rodriguez
Yep.
or Wander Franco or any of these guys that come up with year after year. And you go, would you rather have their card or Harmon Killebrew, Mickey Mantle, not Mickey Mantle, he's on a different level, but Willie McCovey, Willie Stargell, pick your average middle of the road Hall of Famer. And to me, it's like it makes zero sense that any of these guys' cards are worth anything close to more than a Hall of Famer.
Well, it's not only that, but the best a player could turn out to be would be a Hall of Famer.
Right.
So, unless you think they're going to be some sort of special Hall of Famer and get some sort of, elite status title, um, you already know how much Hall of Famers are worth.
Don't you think? And we've been talking baseball for the moment, but I think it varies from sport to sport,
And
right?
position by position.
Let's take football, right? Very
Yep.
quarterback heavy hobby. And yet you have great players, running backs, wide receivers, skill players, heck, linemen and defensive players that don't get nearly the hobby love relative to how good they are in their sport. Agreed?
100%. I think Aaron Donald is worth less than Jordan Love, and it's not even close. And that, I mean, explain that to me.
I can't.
Yeah, right.
Does that mean, is that a sign that the hobby is broken in the way it thinks about cards versus players?
Well, isn't the old adage in baseball cards if don't invest in pitchers and catchers?
Right?
Yeah, so we do have biases.
Or running backs and wide receivers, right?
Yeah, I mean there are built-in biases, and is that because of historical information, or is that because of hobby bias?
I don't even know that I'd use the word bias. I'd use the word short sightedness. From think about remember when Bol was like all the rage in basketball and everybody wanted Bol cards or whatever, and this guy turned out to be nothing. To me, my stance on baseball is like I'm just now going. I need to look at some Paul Goldschmidts, some Nolan Arenados, guys that are at that 10, 12 year. Mike Trout was an anomaly. He was really good for at 6, 7 years, you knew Mike Trout was okay. This guy is one of the greatest players. So I bought his stuff a little bit earlier than my typical. Now I'm looking at Goldschmidt, Arenado. These guys are going, okay, these guys are on that, forever great kind of track,
Yep.
right? That doesn't mean they couldn't get injured tomorrow. Freddie Freeman's a guy that I'm looking at, but they have established themselves as either MVP winners, World Series winners, multiple gold gloves. I mean, the list is long
But
of the accolades to
take a
attract.
guy, take a Mookie Betts,
Right.
MVP, World Series, major market, everything. Um, and I mean, there's some value in his stuff, but how often does his name even come up?
The question is, should it? Like, would you rather have a Mookie Betts card or an Anthony Volpe rookie right now? A Mookie Betts rookie or an Anthony Volpe rookie?
Financially, it's Volpe, sadly, but in actual athletic success, it's
And
Mookie
that's
Betts by far.
that's the point, right? That's the
Yeah.
disconnect that I think people have. It's the speculating, the wanting to be right on a prospect guy that
Well,
I think
Mookie Betts can also bowl, and I want to put that out there. That's an extra skill.
he does what? He can bowl.
He's like a 300 bowler.
That is something that would make his card certainly appreciate in value, I would think. And that's here's the problem. The money part of it skews all of this, and that's what drives the prospecting. That's what drives people's fascination with the almighty next great player is the money part of it. And I hate that. I mean, I'm not even going to use or mince words here. I hate that part of our hobby. Now, if you're a Yankees fan and you want to buy Volpe because you think he's the next young great player, that's a different thing than an Orioles fan or a Red Sox fan buying Volpe because they think he's going to make them money. That
Yes.
just bothers me at my core. Absolutely bothers me. I can't change it. I'm not even necessarily criticizing it. I just don't like it. And can those two coexist? I don't know if I can say those
Well,
statements together.
the Jason Dominguez release, when that was the most asinine situation I've ever seen, of people who know nothing about a player, know nothing about a situation, took a kid that was extremely young, and we're talking about 5 6 figure cards before he ever played.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just take your money and put it in the fireplace.
Right.
Turn it into Kindle. I that
You're
that
better off going to the casino and playing black or red. At least then you got a 50-50 shot of winning. You got about a 2% shot of winning on a prospect, right?
Yep.
I actually think I'm high on that.
Yeah.
Right. So
And then you're talking value again. If you spend $10,000 on a Jason Dominguez card, how well does he have to play in his career to live up to that?
right. We saw it with Vlad Guerrero Jr., right?
Wow, yeah.
That's another good example of recent history. And he's been a great player,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Like he's been really good, but
But
all of his prices are lower than they were in the hype, as good as he's played.
it's a weird thing. Right-handed power hitters that don't do a lot seem to have a ceiling on their hobby value.
Yeah.
If there's not a defensive component, if there's not something else there, it seems like the hobby doesn't like him. And I want to turn this conversation into a different direction, because I think there's two great athletes of all time that don't have a ton of hobby love, a ton of hobby value, a ton of hobby product. Voted best player the first part of the 20th century was Jim Thorpe. He was the number one athlete for the first part of the 20th century, in front of Babe Ruth, Jack Johnson, whoever you want to call. And I'm going to take Bo Jackson for more of a contemporary. And, you can talk about it, Sport Kings on Thorpe, but it's a small list. And even Bo Jackson cards, just very hard to find a lot of value there, unless you're talking about something in a 10, or something weird.
I have seen Bo seems to have a unique following of
Yep.
people. I don't know that I would call Bo Jackson the greatest athlete I've ever seen, period. in
Yep.
terms of athletic ability, the most spectacular athlete I've ever seen, Bo Jackson.
Yep.
Not the greatest baseball player I've ever seen. In fact, he'd be pretty far down the list. Not the greatest football player I've ever seen. But when you combine them together, and unfortunately, his career was cut so short because of the hip injury in football, it's hard to know what that would have been. But I think there are a lot of Bo Jackson fans out there that grew up like I did watching him and mesmerized with what he could do on the field.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that didn't turn into a Hall of Fame career in either sport. I think he could have legitimately, if he had been healthy, certainly football and very likely baseball Hall of Famer. That would have been, that would have put him up there where you're going, oh my gosh, think about Shohei Ohtani and what he's doing. Certainly amazing. This is on a
Yep.
different level. He's doing it in two sports, not just playing two positions in the same sport, right?
Yep.
So, and then you got Jim Thorpe, who was great in a lot of different sports as well, multi-sport athlete, right? Track and field, football, all kinds of stuff. That Jim Thorpe, baseball, even, right? So very underrated card wise. Granted, you have a lot more Bo Jackson cards, and yeah, that's a great analogy. I like that.
Um,
So, how do we fix this? Or does it even need fixing?
well, does it? Do you care if you're buying for yourself? For a person, for this, to me, this is the exact definition of why PCs exist. Because I have the Bo Jackson with the baseball bat and the football pads, and
Yeah,
that's less than $100 card.
90 score.
Yeah,
Love it.
and sitting right there, it's not a big expensive card, but I love it. Um, so that's part of my PC. If I can one day get that Jim Thorpe Sport Kings in a low grade, um, I would love to have that as part of my collection. Um, those are not investments in Jackson Churio. That to me is something that I would. I don't care if they go up and down in price a little bit. That's not the point to me.
Well, let's take, like, should Justin Herbert rookie cards be worth more than Joe Montana's? Or, you know what I mean? Like, just take quarterbacks, even the things that are popular. It makes no sense to me. And again, why do I care? And the answer is I really don't. Like you were bringing up, should it matter to me? Am I collecting them? No. It's just this weird, and honestly, if they liked all the old stuff better and they realized people finally got it goals that that made no sense, then I would be paying more for the cards that I want, right?
Well, isn't that really prospecting again when you buy the quarterbacks and you're hoping they turn into Joe Montana?
Yeah, and I think that's a problem. Wait till they become, I think Pat Mahomes has earned the right to this point to be considered, okay, he's got some skins on the wall. You know what I mean?
Well, we're also talking volatility versus stability.
Maybe.
Um,
Certainly.
and if I believe that Pat Mahomes has proven that he's got a level of stability, I want his cards for both a personal and financial value.
Okay.
Justin Herbert, like if I'm a Chargers fan, you
Sure.
know, like he could be the best quarterback in the history of your franchise. You've got a chance. There's a certain value there. Is it a six-figure value? That's maybe I'm too old and but no, I can't imagine that.
Even if he is the greatest Chargers quarterback ever,
Yeah.
does that mean he? That's maybe a different question. He could be a great quarterback, even win a Super Bowl, an MVP maybe down the road. Does that validate or justify his cards being worth what they are? And to me, it makes zero sense.
Yep.
I
Because
just
you're already paying like he's done it.
right. It ain't gonna. He might do it, and then sees a little pop, right? But if he actually fulfills the expectations that people have. Yeah, it's, I don't know, there's just such a, the hobby's so greedy already, you know, and maybe that's what's really bothering me.
Well, is it a lack of education on the sport side? I mean, the hobby and sport are two different things. We talk about it because we're fans. You and I are sports fans, diehard sports fans. If cards didn't exist, we would still watch sports. There are people who collect cards who do not watch sports.
Right.
And I think that's the disconnect you and I are talking about, is the passion for the sport itself, and having that connection to the actual field matters a lot more to us in our minds. I don't want to actually judge for anybody, but in our minds. And if you don't respect the history, and if you're paying prices that don't respect the sport, that's what kind of rubs me the wrong way. I don't want to speak for you.
No, I think you're articulating that in a way that makes sense, where you go, people don't, if they watch the games, right? Um, Football is probably a really good one because you have players at all kinds of positions that get no hobby love, that are incredibly skilled at what they do, and are all-time great kind of players. I mean, I'm thinking of, oh gosh, players playing currently that are not non-quarterbacks, right? So who are some great running backs that are playing right now? Derrick Henry,
Yeah,
right? Is he an all-time great running back? Yeah,
probably.
he's going to be in the upper echelon, and nobody gives a crap about his cards except Derrick Henry fans or Titans fans, right?
Mrs. Henry.
And Mrs. Henry, yes,
Yes.
his mom cares, and to me that,
That's not
wow,
fair. That's not fair to the quality of his skill.
it it certainly, yeah, it certainly doesn't. They're not connected in any way, right? How good his career is matter. His card prices do not reflect how good he is as a player.
Now,
And you have the other way around too, right? Card prices not reflecting how bad or unproven a player is yet.
how does Trey Lance still have value?
Right. He hadn't done anything,
And
really.
we're on years now.
Right.
People are still prospecting on Trey Lance.
Like, man, I hope he comes back from the injury and turns into Patrick Mahomes or something.
Baker Mayfield cards went up, I forget what percentage this offseason. Um, I mean, that's a leap of faith that
Yeah.
you got to really be a Baker Mayfield fan.
By the way, never ask me percentage change on football players. You're going to get either an incorrect answer or a really incorrect answer. So,
Oh, I just make it up and say it like I really mean it.
right.
Um,
But yeah, you see a
yeah,
player traded in football, and a quarterback especially, right? Oh, maybe this will turn them around, maybe the change of scenery. And I just, I don't know. I wish more hobbyists, more people in the hobby. I think hobbyists, like pure collectors, they do understand what we're talking about. They're going to resonate with what we're saying. It's the
so
people. Go ahead.
I was about to say. So does I'm not being funny. Did Ken Burns affect the value of the baseball card market?
No, but he affected my love of the baseball card market.
But does that translate then into your collecting habits?
Yes, that did. I bought
So,
players after watching that documentary.
so now we're talking about connecting the once again the story of the actual player to the card.
Yes, reading books about players, reading Glory of Their Times, which is a
Yep.
fantastic book about turn of the century baseball, early 1900s baseball, made me want to go buy these players that some of them aren't even Hall of Famers, but I wanted a card to connect me to the stories that I had read about. Um, the Last Dance made me want to buy Michael Jordan cards. It really did. Um, and Scottie Pippen, and guys that were even kind of secondary fiddles to Michael Jordan in that documentary, because I was learning stories and remembering and enjoying it. And man, how can I keep that connection going? Buy a card of them, you know.
So is the disconnect between, you know, on the field and hobby just a matter of how much people are familiar with the player? I mean, is it education? Are we is that the root of everything?
Probably. I just don't think people care. I don't think enough people care.
Enough people, some people do.
Some people care. You and I do. So you love Cal Ripken as an example for not only what he did on the field, but what he was to Baltimore. You could give two craps what the value of the Ripken's cards are, right? You're not buying them for that reason,
Yeah,
and you buy them because you love the player. The fact
yeah,
that they might be worth more is just a okay, you know.
yep. And Bill Ripken as well for different reasons.
Sure, a player that's not even a Hall of Famer, not even an all-time great. I love Michael Young, a great Texas Ranger, probably the if you look at the totality of what they did for the franchise, Michael Young is the greatest Texas Ranger ever. And nobody knows who Michael Young is in the hobby. I don't go to any shows and see Michael Young cards in the display cases, even his rookie cards, right?
Even in local shows,
Even at local shows.
right? That's unbelievable.
He is completely hobby irrelevant.
So here's a great question. I am setting up as a dealer at a show in Pittsburgh. Is it worth bringing Barry Bonds cards?
Yeah, I would say so. And Andrew McCutcheon cards and Jason Kendall cards. And, I'm
Right?
just thinking of kind of beloved pirates, even recent pirates, right? Um, I think there would be people there that want them, but I also think those are few and far between. People like us are few and far between. Um, some people might that are from Pittsburgh and fans will go, man, I can't believe this guy has any. Why does this guy have Jason Kendall cards? Nobody cares about Jason Kendall.
Right.
But you're a Pirates fan, you don't care, or and who knows what their answer would be. But and the funny thing is, even if I saw a Michael Young card, I don't know that I would buy it. That's the other.
Well, do you own Michael Young?
A ton, a ton.
And did you buy most of it when he was playing?
Yes, absolutely.
So, do you typically buy the cards when the guys are playing? This is another branch of the conversation.
Okay.
Active versus retired.
I mean, I'm still buying Beltre cards now. He's retired.
Right.
I kind of got off the Michael Young kick because I kind of bought. He didn't have a ton of stuff, right? So it wasn't hard to kind of get a couple
The
hundred.
Michael Young rainbow was not
Right.
was not the
Right. And I never became like a super collector of him, which can drive guys to buy stuff they normally wouldn't buy. I was just a fan of his, and there is a difference there, a differentiation. If you're a fan of a player, you'll want to have some cards representative of that player's career in your collection. If you're a super collector, it's I want everything of that player.
Yep.
And that's a different level of fandom, right?
Yep.
And so I never got to that level with Michael Young. I did with Ivan Rodriguez. I wanted everything with Ivan Rodriguez as a Ranger while he was playing and after he finished playing. And I still buy Pudge cards when I see them and can pick them up relatively inexpensively. I buy Beltre stuff when I see it now. So again, and Michael Young was the greatest Ranger ever. I just said it, and I do believe that.
But
But
if we're talking sport good versus hobby good, does this also play into? I really, the more I think about it, also retired versus active.
yeah,
The hobby seems to have a real rush for active, and the retired seems to, unless it's Hall of Fame, they just disappear.
yeah, I think certainly for a younger collector, I would think they would be that way. They haven't built nostalgia yet. They don't know
Yeah.
what that is, right? They don't harken back to if they're 22, they don't harken back to when they were 15 and watching a player that actually might still be active.
But when was the last time somebody cared about a Barry Larkin?
Yeah, okay. I just bought a Barry Larkin card not too long ago,
Did
but
you really? Well,
I did.
okay. Well, now you've ruined my whole point. But except for you,
Well,
you're talking about a retired Hall of Famer
right,
that generally is not talked about.
sure. There's plenty of those guys.
Well, but that's what we're talking about: hobby good versus sport good, and that's a real chasm of players that fill that hole. It's a shame.
Yeah, it's way overweighted to players that were sport good that are hobby irrelevant, right?
Yes,
the the list of sport good players, pick your sport, is going to be a lot longer than the players you would list that people in the hobby actually care about. And I
and
would
that
say a majority of hobbyists, um, and that's the problem to me.
yes. And so is that are we here to solve it? Is it the education? Is that the solution here?
I
Do we have
think
a responsibility to teach the next generation?
um, I feel a responsibility to do that, and I try to do that in my podcast. Unfortunately, I think that we all gravitate towards content, whether it's podcasts or YouTube videos or whatever, that we relate to. Meaning, if people think like I do, they're going to watch and listen to what I have to say about that topic. If they don't, my dogs are going nuts. Hang on.
They disagree with what you do on your
They
podcast.
totally disagree. We got a new dog, by the way. So
Aw. Well, congratulations. I'm a dog lover, so that's congratulations.
thank you. She will make some video appearances here soon on Baseball Collector. But uh, oh man, what's the solution? That's what we were talking about. I mean, I don't think it's fixable. I honestly don't think you can fix it.
I don't think you should be able to buy a ticket to the National without watching Ken Burns baseball.
Prove that you watched it. We'll have a screening of all
Right,
all 10 hour, or I mean 10 episodes, which is
right.
actually
Like 12 innings now.
40 hours. It's 40 hours of viewing. You have to have watched that at least twice before you come to that. We'll say even twice. No, I mean, and even then, does it move the needle for some people? Probably not. It won't emotionally affect them the way it affected me.
But you made a comment, The Last Dance, Winning Time. I
Yes.
mean, more of these shows, and hopefully they stay historically accurate as much as possible. Um, Hopefully, maybe that's the answer.
I watched the Reggie documentary the other day.
Yep.
Um, Fantastic, by the way. If nobody's seen it, I saw the Willie Mays documentary, and although it felt, especially the last half, like a commercial for Barry Bonds' induction to the Hall of Fame, it was still very well done. And I learned a lot about Willie Mays. I learned a lot about Reggie Jackson watching his things that Reggie was kind of a gap player for me. When I became a fan of baseball in the early 80s, he was ending his career. So his stuff he did in the 70s, I was born, but I wasn't
Right.
into the game. The things he did in the early 70s, mid 70s for the A's, and then going to the Yankees and doing all, I just learned a lot from that and was reminded of certain things. And uh, it made me want to go buy Reggie Jackson cards.
And not just his rookie card.
Correct.
And that's a big thing. A lot of and I want to separate that. A lot of rookie cards break the rules because people like rookie cards.
Sure.
But the second you get to the second or third year, that's where so many of these guys just disappear.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so
So we brought up a question that most people will probably vehemently disagree with us, and that's okay. Put it down below why you collect what where you think the disconnect is between being a good athlete in the sport that they're in versus their hobby relevancy. And
and you collect somebody personally that may not have hobby love but has personal love to you.
yeah, would love to hear your comments down below. I know Danny and I didn't come up with any hard answers. If you have any of those too, what are some solutions? We'd love to hear those as well. Danny, thanks for the discussion, man. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Any other last points you want to make?
Yeah, I mean, we joke about the Ken Burns, but go out there, just go to YouTube, watch anything, learn something, watch the Nolan Ryan documentary.
Oh,
You know, just pick it up and watch it. If you're gonna watch some junk Netflix or junk YouTube, make it baseball history. It really will change the way you collect.
How much more did you watch the Nolan one, by the way? What was
I
the
try
length?
to watch all of them.
It is. I had tremendous. I love Nolan Ryan already. I got stuff of Nolan Ryan all over my room. I love Nolan Ryan even more after watching that. It was pretty cool just to watch the stories, uh, the history of that, his personal stuff, with his wife, and fascinating. Very, very cool. I encourage people as well, just like Danny did. So thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next week for another episode of Hobby Think Tank. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care. Keep collecting.